Well, not the same audience as this morning. Something happened. What happened? Too much lunch? Too much fatigue? Some of both? And there's some persons with us that weren't with us before. Huh? Okay, from faraway places. Arlington, yeah. Okay. Well, Krishna's mercy. Madhurya Kadambini, chapter 6. Cloud bank of nectar. Enchantment of the heart. So this asakti stage is number 7 in the list of 9. And it's the final stage of the sadhana stage, although there are things that are said about it that are so elevated that you wonder, why? So we'll answer that question. Why is it still in the sadhana bhakti category? As you know, Rupa Goswami has divided bhakti rasa amrita sindhu into 3. Sadhana, bhava, prema. And same, these 9 stages, sadhana, and the topmost of the sadhana is asakti, attachment to Krishna. Because before attachment to Krishna is attachment to the activities that connect one with Krishna. You know, this here Shravanam Kirtanam. And with the taste that's spontaneous, the mind and the senses are just absorbed in hearing and chanting and tirelessly hearing and chanting. Then the asakti stage is attachment to the object of hearing and chanting. Here's the top part of that chart. You notice the cloud bank that's pouring water on the root, and it's Madhurya, not water. And then we see these 3 things. There's buds, there's flowers, and there's the mature fruit that comes from the flower. The blossoming of the bhakti lata. There's 2 characteristics we'll hear about briefly in the bhava stage, and 2 additional ones in the prema stage. 2 plus 2 plus 2 equals, generally equals 6. So the 2 corresponding with the sadhana stage, starting from the beginning, kleshagni and shubhada, the eradication of kleshas and the awakening of auspiciousness up to and including asakti. And then comes the bhava stage, rarely achieved. And it derides even the conception of moksha. So here's the beginning part of the asakti presentation. This will be shorter. So that what that means is we'll have time for some discussion, because from the earlier sessions today, there were questions online that didn't get responded to. So we're going to hopefully, be able to do all that. Asakti, attachment to Krishna, which develops when one's taste for bhajan or ruci becomes extremely deep. And then comments on that statement. The desire creeper of bhakti, bears clusters of buds. Notice the cluster of buds, heralding the swift appearance of flowers of bhava, and then the fruits of prema, another cluster of buds that open in some time to a flower and then fruit. Krishna becomes the exclusive object of one's devotional activities in asakti. Now this is with the assumption that the devotee is a Krishna bhakta, the same as applies for Ram bhakti and so forth, Nrsimha bhakta. So a little distinction between the two. This isn't new, but it's understandable, easily understandable. Ruci has a taste for bhajan. The bhajan with the purpose, developing a mood of devotional service through Shravana and Kirtana. And that's the main focus or main object. On the other hand, asakti has bhajaniya. One is bhajan, the other is bhajaniya. Bhajaniya, the goal of bhajan. That's the main object. And there's this strong aspiration, we'll hear the Sanskrit terms again, direct attachment to the focus. Worshipful deity, Ishtadev, one's focus. There's a phrase, this bhajaniya phrase, I'm familiar with it because Srila Prabhupada uses it in a number of places in his writings. We'll see in a moment. Both bhajan and bhajaniya, or the ruci and asakti, focus on both aspects. Just one is more mature, the other's not yet so mature. So here's the phrase that Prabhupada uses. I'm familiar with bhajaniya from this phrase. Bhajaniya parama parusha sukha matra svasukhatvam. One more time. Bhajaniya parama parusha sukha matra svasukhatvam. And it's his statement that Jiva Goswami expresses this in the Sandarbhas, and he doesn't say which one. So I spent some time, half hour, searching the different digital references to Sandarbhas, and I couldn't find it. But the number of times that Prabhupada uses this phrase in his lectures and in his books is a lot. So whether Jiva Goswami wrote it or didn't write it, he wrote it. Or it expresses what Prabhupada identifies as desirelessness. Desirelessness means there's only one desire, and that's Krishna. That's desirelessness. It's like the detachment of the person who rejects or gives up things that are in relation to Hari. That's Palgu Vairagya, false renunciation. And real renunciation or complete renunciation is utilizing everything in relation to Krishna and Krishna service. And what is there that's not in relation to Krishna? Everything comes from Krishna, so it has its relationship with Krishna. So things can be used in Krishna service, provided that's the purpose and intention is Krishna service, not whimsical. Theft can be used in Krishna service. Now normally it's a no-no. However, one of the alvars in the Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya is renowned for theft. You know the story? You know the story, Radhakrishnan? A little bit? The story goes like this. I forget, Tirumangai, I think is one of the alvars visited Sri Rangam, and he saw the deity of Ranganath without a proper temple. Now, how did the deity of Ranganath get there? The answer is Vibhishan was given that deity to take with him back to Lanka by Lord Ramachandra. And the Vimana, remember the Vimana that was usurped by Ravana from his stepbrother Kuvera, and then he used his Vimana to travel here and there and conquer all over the place. When he was defeated, Ravana was defeated, Vibhishan gave the Vimana to Ramachandra. And that's that Vimana that Ramachandra rode to come back in time before the 14 years were lapsed, so that his brother Bharata wouldn't burn himself in fire. It's just part of the Ram Leela. And after Vibhishan accompanied Ramachandra, he was there for his coronation. And when the coronation was over and some days passed, Ramachandra sent him back because he had been crowned the king of Sri Lanka. So Ramachandra is the emperor of the world, and there's a king underneath the emperor of the world. So he sent him back with a deity that had come from the ancestry of the Surya dynasty and gave it to Vibhishan to worship. Except he never made it. He went as far as Sri Rangam, and the deity landed. There's a detail. Deities don't face south, but the deity in Sri Rangam, Sranganath, faced south because that was the direction of Vibhishan. So there's the deity, and the deity is for a long time without a temple. And one of the alvars of the Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya came there with some associates, some followers. And he went door to door and asked for donations to help build the temple for the deity. And people weren't forthcoming. So he got together with his associates, and they robbed people to build the temple for the deity. It was like a nice story. It's a nice story. One of the associates knew how to step on people's shadow so they couldn't move. Another knew how to walk on water. Another knew how to open locked doors. And they did their gangster activity to steal the money because people didn't give the money. They stole the money and built the temple. Haribol. Now, if you have that capacity, if you're an alvar of the Sri Sampradaya, you can do stuff like that. And otherwise you don't do stuff like that. But it can, if you have that capacity, that which comes from Krishna, stealing comes from Krishna, right? Wakanshore steals butter. So, incomplete renunciation is that which has a relationship with Krishna and reject it. And complete renunciation is that which is in relation to Krishna. You use it in service to Krishna. Instead of Falgo Vairagya, it's Yukta Vairagya. Yes? Similarly, desirelessness is not get your dagger out and stab desire to death until it's dead and you have no more desire. Become a Buddhist, no more desire. But real desirelessness is bhajaniya. Bhajaniya, let's go back up top, the goal of bhajan. Bhajaniya, parama purusha, the Supreme Person, sukha, the happiness of the Supreme Person as the object of one's bhajan. Matra sva sukhatvam, exclusively, that's one's own sva sukhatvam. Krishna's happiness is my happiness, and that's desirelessness. It's a nice definition. So asakti is the stage where one has achieved that. Desirelessness. There's only one object worthy of bhajan. The prior stage, bhajan. Let me focus, let me direct my intelligence to engage the mind and senses in activities of glorification and service to the personality of Godhead. And then it just matures. Service to the personality of Godhead through the medium of hearing and chanting, etc. Things that follow hearing and chanting. In the stage of Ruci, prior to asakti, here are these three. Those of you that like to take notes, this is a good thing to take notes on. And I'll ask June and Jivana to remind me to send this slide so you can circulate it. But it's so you don't have to take notes. Bhagavat prapti abhilas. Abhilas means, who knows? Abhilas, desire. Desire. The desire of Bhagavat prapti, desire to attain the Lord. Bhagavat prapti abhilas. To do that which is favorable or pleasing to him. Anukulya abhilas. And the desire for an affectionate relationship with him. So harda abhilas. And these three terms are repeated again and again and again and again and again and again in Bhakti Sandarbha. And naturally they make their way into Madhurya Kadambini. Desire to attain the Lord, to do that which is favorable to him, and have a personal, affectionate relationship with him. And in the Ruci stage, it's cultivated by directing intelligence, and the asakti stage is spontaneous. Similarly, prior to asakti, one has to apply effort to counteract desire and fix the mind. In the sadhana stage, nishtha, one can never exactly say when the mind withdraws from spirit, if instead of going to spirit. And the asakti stage, one cannot detect when the mind withdraws from matter and goes to spirit. Spontaneous. You got it? It's nice. Absorption is spontaneous. No effort is needed. Same notion. This is Vishwanath. In the early stages of Ruci, the devotee internally reflects with humility. Oh, alas, I'm under heavy siege from materialistic life. So how can I bring my heart to the sanctuary of devotional service to the Supreme Lord? Such a sincere prayer helps release one's consciousness from material bondage and attaches it to the Supreme Lord. So humility is an impetus for intensifying, because we're going to hear this word intensity a lot, in these upper stages of bhakti, the intensity of effort. So in the intensity of one's effort, one feels humility. I'm this little jiva, that's weak and not so competent. And how is it possible? So let me, please, my dear Lord, please give me your mercy. Release my consciousness from material bondage. And in the asakti stage, before one even lifts one's hands and offers that prayer, he finds himself already attached to the Supreme Lord. That's the effort and spontaneity topic. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. We've encountered this verse. This is now, I think, about the third time. We can say it together. Text 19 from chapter 2. Tadarajastamo bhava kamalobha dayeschaye cheta etair anavidham stitam satve prasidati. The mind becomes unaffected by lust, greed, anger, hatred, and illusion, which arise from rajas and tamas. Then the mind becomes fixed in the form of the Lord at the stage of asakti and becomes satisfied. Prasidati. Prasidati, completely satisfied. The mind, uncontaminated by rajas and tamas, by kama and lobha, becomes situated in Shuddha Sattva. So this is a subtext of the same thing. At the stage of asakti, ignorance and passion subside, and Shuddha Sattva, not just Sattva, but Shuddha Sattva, becomes prominent. You know, and it makes sense. You become attached to the object that's supremely pure, you become pure. You get closer, it becomes, the lower modes become lesser, but attachment in its Shuddha Sattva. Similarly, Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur recalls these verses in First Canto, Chapter 5. Again, there's that Narada in his previous life as a little boy, and there's the sages giving their benediction mudra with their hand and saying, talks about Krishna. By the mercy of the sages who are chanting about the attractive pastimes of Krishna daily for 4 months, I heard about Krishna in that place with Ruci and eventually asakti. Now, those aren't the words used in the verse, but it's our acharyas explaining that's the import or purport. And a few verses later, it moved from Ruci and asakti to rati or bhava, like swift. 4 months, little boy. Amazing. So who was he before he was a little boy? He's telling, Narada saying who he was before he was Narada, and who was this little boy before he was a little boy? Not an ordinary little boy. 4 months. Think about our Gurukul situations, kids hearing on a daily basis from nice Vaishnavas and Bhava Bhakti in 4 months. This little boy is special. I mean, the sadhus were special, but the little boy was also special. Then there's this nice teaching, again, some further clarification about the status of asakti. Attachment is so absorbing and complete that it fully cleans the mirror of the heart. The beginning is it begins. Cetadarpana marjanam. We can experience that just from chanting. Now, in the mature stage, the asakti stage, completely cleansed heart. And when the mirror of the heart or chitta becomes completely cleansed, sometimes, without any advance warning, Krishna doesn't have a little trumpet and drum roll and here I come, da-da-da-da. He just boop, appears in the mind. And when the devotee sees the Lord appearing in his mind, he feels, he's convinced. It's not just the Lord appearing in my mind. He's appearing before me. It's not just appearing in my heart or in my mind. Then suddenly disappears. That's the nature of asakti. The reciprocation of the Lord with the place that's pure, that's the heart of the devotee. And he personally reciprocates, makes his form visible. Spurti, it's called. It's boom, sudden appearance, and then withdraws. Spurti. Bhaktivinoda Thakur has something nice to say about this stage. The stage of asakti or attachment has a feature. He has used the Sanskrit phrase dridha nishchaya. Dridha nishchaya. The characteristic of this asakti stage is at one's will. There's this word icha again. Swa, icha becomes sweshcha, svecha, purvika. At one's own will, one can sit down at any time, anywhere, remember Krishna. Spontaneously devoid of interruption in his concentrated practice. As I'm reading this, I'm thinking this disciple of Prabhupada, young American fellow, and he relished testing himself. He would chant Gayatri in the noisiest places. I remember specifically. There was an air hammer. They were breaking up a sidewalk, and he sat right next to the air hammer and sat down and chanted his Gayatri mantra. He was an unusual devotee. I don't know if that helped his concentration at all, but he did like that regularly. Spontaneously devoid of interruption in concentrated practice, that's Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Nishtha, sequence. Nishtha means continuous bhakti without confusion. Ruci means this desire for the Lord, but with the direction of the intellect. Asakti means desire for the Lord, which is natural and spontaneous without intellectual direction. Progressive. Still in the sadhana stage. In other words, in the stage of asakti, one experiences swa-rasaki. Remember that term, swa-rasaki, suddenly, or spurti, suddenly appears by performance of bhajan itself and the object of bhajan, independent of intellectual resolve. Vishwanath comments, this is Lord Chaitanya's teachings to Sanatana Goswami in Madhya Lila, Chaitanya Charitamrita. When one becomes attached, this is just cut and paste, the verse from Chaitanya Charitamrita. When one becomes attached, in this case, instead of saying asakti, it's raga. When one becomes attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead according to one's natural inclination to love Him, and is fully absorbed in thoughts of the Lord, that state is called transcendental attachment. Tat mayi. And devotional service according to that attachment is called ragatmika, or spontaneous devotional service. Now that's Chaitanya Mahaprabhu teaching Sanatana Goswami. Commonly, in a more specific than broad sense of this one, the ragatmika devotees are the eternal associates of Krishna in Braja. Here it's broader. It's okay. Now, Vishwanath, in order to paint a nice picture of what's it like way up there in that realm of being attached to the personality of Godhead spontaneously without any intellectual endeavor. What's it like up there? So I'm just going to read. It's creative writing, it's poetic, but we got a picture of the consciousness of such a person. Here we go. Early in the morning one says, "Dear sir, coming from somewhere with the divine Shalagram, Shila hanging from your neck in a handsome box, I see that your tongue is in a constant flurry of relishing the nectar of Sri Krishna's names as you recite them very softly. This sight encourages me, who am so unfortunate, to ask you something. Please tell me, what holy places have you visited in your wanderings? What things have you seen, and what realization of the Supreme Lord have you had? Have you had that have made you able to perfect your own life and those of others?" He's inviting Krishna Katha. Spending a few minutes drinking the nectar of the words in response, he then goes somewhere else and says, "Dear sir, with the exceptional opulence of these attractive books arranged in your room, I can deduce that you are a learned man. So please explain to me this one verse of the 10th canto that brings the sparrow of my ears back to life by raining down the nectar of its purport." Doesn't say what verse, but just it's an inquisitive spirit flowing from one thing to the next thing. His body becomes covered with horripilation by hearing this explanation, and then he goes somewhere else. He says, "This very moment, my life will become successful because I see this assembly which can at once counteract everything I have ever done." Thus, after falling on the ground like a stick, he shows signs of respect and humility, greeted with honor in a transcendental affectionate way by the crest jewel of that assembly, a greatly learned pure devotee of the Lord. That's the person who's speaking with his palms folded and he meets a sadhu. A greatly learned pure devotee, he sits down nearby that leader of the assembly, his body shrinking in humility, and says, "Dear sir, O most eminent of physicians, who can cure the grave disease of material existence present in all living beings of the three worlds, please feel my pulse and determine the disease of me, this lowly and wretched person. Please prescribe my diet and medicine. Please use some potent tonic to effect the strong, healthy condition I desire." Thus, pleading with tears in his eyes, he is then pleased by the nectar flowing from that person's merciful glance and sweet words. He spends 5 or 6 days serving his feet and then moves on, spiritually enlivened, and eventually reaches the forest. He's just poetically giving us a picture of someone that's kind of lost in the asakti stage. In the forest, he sees some deer. If I've actually received Krishna's merciful glance, then this black deer, looking at me from a distance, should make 3 or 4 steps towards me. If I haven't received it, he should turn his back to me. He understands even the instinctive behavior of the deer, other animals, and birds as signs of Krishna's favor or displeasure. He's immersed, this fellow. He comes to the outskirts of a village where some playing Brahmin boys seemed to him to be Sanat Kumar and his brothers. He asks them, am I going to obtain the son of Krishna, the king of Vraja? They reply to him with a childish broken syllable, Ma. Means no. Which he alternatively considers impossible to understand or else obvious. Then he goes back to his home. Sitting once more in his house, he thinks, like a miserly merchant, greedy for more and more wealth, where can I go? What can I do? But by what means can all these things I want come into my hands? Like a greedy merchant. He's not done yet. It's nice. He ponders thus with a languid face, sometimes going to sleep, sometimes standing up, sometimes sitting down. When his family members ask him the cause of this behavior, he sometimes keeps quiet, like a dumb man, and sometimes says something evasive. That's family members. Relatives think his intelligence has become covered over. The scholars of the Vedanta think he is just by nature a fool. The ritualists think he's fallen. The non-devotees think, oh, he must have attained something very rare. And the offenders think he's an imposter, but whatever they think, he has no concern at all for honor or dishonor. The asakti in his heart does not allow him to stay in one place. Where shall I go? What shall I do? Where can I find Krishna? These are expressions like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's expressions we find in Chaitanya Charitamrita. This is how a devotee acts who has fallen into the Ganges stream of attachment to the Supreme Lord. So if you don't want these strange behaviors, don't get attached to Krishna. If you get attached to Krishna, fasten your seatbelt. And you don't know what's going to happen. It's because it's on the spontaneous platform. There's a very nice book that guides our scriptural study, Narada Bhakti Sutra, and Sutra number 78 speaks similarly. Although devotional service is one, it becomes manifest in 11 forms of attachment. And I counted them twice, it's 11. Attachment to the Lord's glorious qualities, to his beauty, to worshiping him, to remembering him, to serving him, to reciprocating with him as a friend, parent, lover, surrendering one's whole self to him, to being absorbed in thought of him, and to experience separation from him. This last is the supreme attachment. We knew it had to come. It is an important. Boga and vipralamba, meeting and separation, feelings when there's separation. It's a big, robust topic in the followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And what to speak of, a point of conflict from others outside of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's line. Carrying on. Despite the spontaneous nature of asakti, it is included within sadhana bhakti because slight traces of anartha still remain. We've mentioned this, and here it is again. So we're going to see our celebrated chart. Again, here's some details in that chart. meditation is very deep. There's a trace of the material aspect. And eye and mind spiritualization is complete. And one of those who has that is Queen Kunti. We've seen this now 3 times. This is the 4th time, but it's exemplary of this standard. O Lord of Madhu, as the Ganges forever flows to the sea, without hindrance, let my attraction be constantly drawn unto you without being diverted to anyone else. Asakti. And another verse, this is the first time we're seeing it during this presentation, but it's a very celebrated verse from Kapila's teachings to Devotee on the chapter of devotional service. And what's essential about it is the last line. Ratir bhaktir anukramishati. Shraddha ratir bhaktir anukramishati. Anukrama means step by step. Shraddha ratir bhaktir. In the association of pure devotees, discussion of the pastimes and activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is very pleasing and satisfying to the ear and to the heart. By cultivating knowledge, such knowledge, one gradually becomes advanced on the path of liberation, and thereafter he is freed, and his attraction becomes fixed. Then real devotion and devotional service begin. Meaning, real devotion and devotional service is unmixed, and before it's mixed. So it's not devotional service, but it's not pure devotional service. It's because bhakti is pure, unmixed. And the reason for pointing this out is, according to commentary, Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur says these last 3 in the last line, Shraddha, Ratir, and Bhakti, these refer to the stages of asakti, bhava, and prema. And acharyas do have a different opinion sometimes. And in his Kramasandarbha, commenting on this verse, Jiva Goswami states something different. Shraddha indicates firm faith. Firm faith as in nishtha or visvasa. That's another term that's used along with Shraddha. Then Rati. Commonly, Rati corresponds with Bhava. They're interchangeable. So in case people want to ask, here's the answer. What's the difference between Rati and Bhava? Answer. There's no difference. They're two terms for the same thing. They they touch on a particular aspect, but it's the same stage of bhakti. Bhakti refers to prema, but bhakti refers to the whole thing. But specifically, Jiva Goswami says in this sequence, Shraddha, Ratir, Bhaktir, Anukramishati. So step by step. Krama, Anukrama, Anukramishati. Step by step, these things happen. And we saw this one several times, so I think I'm just going to, the Ganges flows downstream towards the sea. Similarly, the mind flows towards Krishna in a transcendental state of consciousness. Just a few more slides. Strong. This is Rupa Goswami saying or writing, without attaining asakti, bhava bhakti. Bhava bhakti, bhava bhakti cannot be manifest or attained without prior having asakti, which makes sense. To be attached to something is a prerequisite to having ecstasy in relation to that something, if it's spiritual. The material has a reverse effect. Vishwanath makes a reference to some discussion in the 5th canto. Shukadev is speaking to Maharaj Parikshit, where he says, those engaged in getting the Lord's favor attain liberation from the Lord very easily, but it does not easily give the opportunity to render direct service unto him. Now, direct service unto him, as you recall, there are 3 characteristics of Ruci that are sought, or intelligence drives one in that direction, and in asakti, they're spontaneous. Remember that. So, Bhagavat Prapti, Lalyam. So, Krishna doesn't easily give direct association to himself. Jiva Goswami comments this su durlabha, or the rarely attained state of Bhava Bhakti, is one of the characteristics of Bhava Bhakti. And therefore, speaking about Bhava Bhakti, even though one executes sadhana bhakti with attachment, sadhana bhakti with attachment, that's asakti. Sadhana bhakti with attachment. So asakti is at the top stage of sadhana bhakti. So even one has attained asakti until the time that one produces intense asakti in that bhakti. The Lord does not give bhava bhakti. You have to pay the price. You know the verse. Rupa Goswami has written this nice verse. If you hear that love of Godhead is available in the marketplace, be ready to pay any price. Any price. Intense, so that's the price. Laulyam, that's the answer. The intense greed. Greed, which is a bad thing. In the spiritual realm, it's a good thing. Then it's the real thing of what greed is, and the other is a reflection of what the real thing is. And it's not nice. Greed is not nice. Material greed. Almost done. Further points. Look at this, Krishna's lotus feet. Narottam Das Thakur points out in his Prema Bhakti Chandrika, Raga Nuga Bhakti is the path of attachment, or raga, or asakti. And this is it. Manashiksha, we made reference to this before, at least to this Manashiksha verse number 1. He, Raghunath Das Goswami, is advising, become attached to Radha Krishna. And he gives a method of how to become attached. Take shelter of Rupa and Sanatan and Swarup Damodar and pray for their mercy. But the taking shelter has some qualifiers. Extraordinary eagerness, in atitaram, very intense. He, Raghunath Das, is teaching Raga Bhakti. He lived it, and he's teaching it. And you read his writings, and that's the association you get. He's attached to the Ragatmika Bhaktas, and we become attached to him, we become attached to the Ragatmika Bhaktas. Yes? By disciplic succession, by, upalakshana. And that's the end of chapter 6. So tomorrow, we're going to, Krishna permitting, will be tomorrow. And tomorrow, Krishna permitting, we're going to discuss Bhava Bhakti and then Prema Bhakti, and then have a party. Prema Bhakti party. And honor Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur for giving us this rare jewel. Of course, he's the instrument of those who he looks up to, starting with Rupa Goswami and Sarup Damodar and other great Vaishnavas, and Lord Chaitanya, and coming to give to the world Krishna Prema freely. Mo bhavaranyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namane Gaura Trishe Namaha. So let's see if we have discussion. Didn't do so badly. It's 3:30. I told a few stories. I can't help myself. Yes, Jivana Jivana.
While I did study the book prior to coming here, my appreciation by hearing from yourself just the depth and all of the secondary references besides the Madhurya Kadambini book really enriched the experience. I have two questions. One is, you mentioned this, how Bhajan Rahasya reflects Madhurya Kadambini in one sense that it also talks about the stages of bhakti. At some point, do you plan to go deeply to present that?
If I say it, then I've got to do it. And there's some other objectives in front of me before that one. So I want to, one at a time. It's like, one mantra at a time.
Maharaj, the other question, when I was going through this content, you've been at this for 55 years. And I was curious, or maybe looking for some additional hope. Have you seen or observed the journey of the soul goes from preliminary faith to some of these higher stages in the movement in contemporary times?
Oh, yeah. No hesitation. Oh, yeah. And many, not all, but many of those, as we heard, they like to hide it. Some of them don't like to hide it. It's by nature. Some are like this and some are like that. But yes, absolutely. I've been saying, and I'll say it now, one of my godbrothers, in the past 7 years of his life, he was chanting 3 times 64 rounds every day before the sun came up. What to speak of what he did the rest of the day. Every day. That's not ordinary. That's not ordinary. So, etc. And it's not. The experience is not some numerical thing. It's just persons who are very sincere and serious in applying themselves to bhajana kriya, in the association of sadhus, etc. then it's exhibited in different ways by different individuals. But the answer to your question, without hesitation, yes. I mean, I've had some God brothers express to me, I didn't probe because they didn't volunteer, but they have a clear, they have had some revelation of their spiritual form and their eternal relationship with Krishna. I didn't probe, but just from chanting. Kabe habi bolo se din amar. But yes, and it's not because of the relationship they have confided. I didn't probe because it's, if they want to share, they can share. I'm not going to dig. Get them to show what's in their hand. But the process is effective, and it's effective. And to go to higher stages is certainly, it's not a bluff. It's not necessarily, what we're after either. What we're after, the higher stages in the real sense is, like we've been hearing. From great souls. Someone else. Here she is, the enthusiastic questioner.
So this time my question is on the asakti. You mentioned about the deity, the desire to worship the worshipable deity. So my question is around that. So we have different processes of bhakti, and every time I saw the different stages, I realized that it is hearing and chanting always. Those are the solutions, hearing and chanting.
That's it. That's the doorway. It's not the end. It's the doorway.
So then my question is I thought that each process of bhakti, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaran, each one of them are equally potent. And
but while they're equally potent, there's a place to begin.
Okay.
Go ahead. I'm interrupting.
That's okay. Go ahead.
Editing.
So that's fine.
Excuse me.
That's clarifying also. So thankful to do that. If they're equally potent and they have the ability to elevate one from one stage to another, then how deity worship is significantly important compared to other
Deity worship specifically?
Deity worship specifically.
Read Srimad Bhagavatam, where Prabhupada describes it. But I'll summarize what Prabhupada describes. Generally speaking, people are in the bodily conception of life. So how to get to the spiritual conception when you have a bodily conception? Deity worship helps because there's a form that's not, it looks like, but it's not material. So one can identify with form that I'm attached to and become spiritualized by that which is not, it has form but is not material. It's dovetail. That's on the material side, it's a dovetail. And then what to speak of on the transcendental, just like the holy name or the Bhagavatam or the holy Dham, they're all spiritual. They may look like a book, or may sound like music, or may look like just another tourist place. And people may go to a holy place because of tourism. Or pious people, not just tourism, they're going to get some punya points and they get to go to heaven after this life because they went to lots of pilgrimage places or holy places. Anyway, you can see something that's spiritual, not as fully spiritual. But your specific question is deity worship, because primarily people are in the bodily conception. So it's connecting the bodily conception aspect of consciousness and connecting it to the deity, to a form, spiritual form. And then following the vidhis under the guidance of qualified persons, then it can spiritualize your bodily conception of life, and it becomes a spiritual conception of yourself and those who you have bodily relations with, family members, friends, community, country, and keep going out. It's at the center of the bodily conception, and it spiritualizes it. That's why it's very important. It has special importance. But it's not for a neophyte. Prabhupada didn't introduce deity worship right away. But he wasn't too shy either. He, allowed it. Okay?
I have another question.
Okay.
So this question is like, I've always debated like whether I should ask or not, but the kind of response you just gave to his question, and I feel like I should ask that question. So I had the chance to meet two kind of people.
Say it slowly. You had what?
I came across two people. One of them, both of them are not initiated, but one of them actually, she went through ecstasy and things like that. And it happened, she went to Mayapur and she grew up having strong inclination to do deity worship for Krishna. So she went to Mayapur, and there was where this gravitational pull, the water, and she goes and it was during some Purnima, and the moon was shining, and she goes deep into the water with her family, and she goes through ecstasy, and she receives, she opens her palm and she receives Laddu Gopal, and from Noya, so she has that in her house and she worships that, and then ISKCON embraced her and showed her the desartic succession through Jayapataka Swami Maharaj, and she's working on her initiation and things like that. But she is in a very supported environment where she can practice spirituality.
She is.
Yes.
Okay.
She is. So, but this is where
This is a long story. Can you make it a little shorter?
Shorter, yes. So, you said that there are people who hide it and who express it. So then I know another person who actually can see the deity like movable. So, but she doesn't want to come out.
That's okay.
But when I go through these stages, because spirituality is about asking questions and clarifications and things like that. So if one doesn't ask those questions, what they feel, then that clarification is not happening. So my question is, should they come out or should they hide it?
Well, it depends. That's an easy answer, isn't it? But it depends. And then what are some of the variables that are out there? Look at the checklist of variables, and the relationships that she has with people, her nature of being a private person as opposed to an outgoing social person. But being inquisitive is imperative. Now, where does she or someone, depends, different people are going to exhibit inquisitiveness differently, but being inquisitive is imperative. So she needs a place to go. Maybe it's this and that and the other thing, but either a person or books or combination, and a place to go, a Shiksha Guru. Someone who's worthy of trust, and they invest trust, and They don't blah, blah, but, at the right time, in the right circumstance, they have their inquisitiveness, Brahma Jigyasu. And they ask. They don't have to blah, blah. They just, they want to go further and go further and go further and understand, and seeking clarity and all those nice things. But they can be a very internal and private type of person. But still there must be some teaching and teachers to give teachings for such a person. And some people are more gregarious and garrulous and social, and some people are more private, and somewhere in between, and So variety is fine, but principle is to be acknowledged. And I think I'm going to move on. Okay?
Thank you.
Who's next?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. My question was, so sometimes one can be in a lower level of bhakti, but experience at times, for example, taste. If someone goes to a japa retreat, for example, and then for some moments they might experience some higher consciousness.
Great. Mercy.
Okay, so that's...
And then, ooh.
Yeah, so I was just wondering what is that and why?
Mercy. It's mercy. And, smile. Wow, Krishna's being kind. You're getting a small dose or shower or, a moment of Krishna's mercy. Fantastic. And then if one may go on, at a higher level, one would go back to the previous level. All kinds of things can happen.
So it doesn't have to be linear?
It doesn't have to be anything. Krishna,
Okay.
Our relationship with Krishna doesn't have to be anything, but it's very personal. And how much do we want a relationship with Krishna as opposed to how much we want to feel good or have our own idea of what happiness is? And Krishna knows. And one who has faith in Krishna places their faith in Krishna. And Krishna reciprocates in different ways, for all kinds of different ways. There's lots of different devotees, and they have different ways of Krishna reciprocating with them. And it can be like this, and then another time it's like that, another person it's something else. There's principles involved, and that's what we're discussing, not the application of those principles. The application is diverse. The principles are very straightforward. Krishna is loving.
Okay, thank you, Maharaj.
Okay.
So not in the selfish or...
Too loud.
Not in the selfish or cutting the corner point of view, but Narad Muni's case is a shortcut, is an exception to this.
Oh yeah.
Through proper channel.
Yeah.
So
Not too many Narada Munis around.
yeah. Who knows? There could be some, but
Who knows? There could
yeah.
be some. Not too many though.
Yeah. So that was my first, so there is a way to get a special mercy and a grace of Lord. My next question is, let's say me, myself, I don't have lolyam, I don't have intense desire to have Lord in my life or to see Lord, but I have intellectual intensity.
You do, I noticed.
So intellectual intensity, based on intellectual intensity and constant prayer,
Yeah.
based on that.
Krishna has endowed you and each of us with different, and you use that which Krishna has endowed you with. And with that intensity of intellect, and other things, Krishna will help you get to him. He'll give you the intelligence through teachings and teachers how to get to him.
Yeah.
And with your intelligence, you'll move.
Yes.
Because that's intelligence doesn't just discern, it does. It
Yes.
moves.
Yes.
Okay?
Thank you, Maharaj.
Okay, up front, and then we're going to do online. You ready for some online stuff? Okay. Because we're neglecting the online people. We're going to go to online next. Then we'll come back. Okay?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So I'm seeking clarification of terms. So earlier you had mentioned that, in bhakti, the sadhya and sadhana are different, right? Are the same. But here while discussing Ruci and asakti, the term bhajan and bhajaniya, they were distinguished at that stage. Are they the same?
No, you don't get confused. You're an intelligent person. So intelligent persons like you don't get confused. So please don't get confused. There's speaking two different things. The means and the sadhana and the sadhya, not mature, you don't have to switch horses. It's just the same horse that takes you to the goal. That's one term, one comparison. The other is the worship and the worshipped, the object of. So it's like grammar, subject, object, and predicate, and verb. It's like grammar. So there's the subject, that's the worshipper, and the worship, and then there's the object. It's like grammar. Think of it like that. Subject, object. Ashraya, vishaya. Ashraya, vishaya. You know those terms, right? The abode, that's the heart. The shelter, the place of shelter. Ashraya. And then vishaya is who you're taking shelter of. He's the enjoyer. He's the vishaya. And I'm, the one that's doing the worship and the service. So it's two different realms, altogether different. Don't mix them up, because you're an intelligent man, you won't mix them up. Next question. That's it. Online. He's the compassionate one. He's kind to the people that are feeling neglected.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. The first question is from Taruni Radha Mataji.
Yes, she told me she sent something in.
I'll read it as is. In Nishtha stage, there are two types.
Yeah.
The first has steadiness with good characteristics, and the second has good characteristics alone.
No,
Okay.
no, that's not a correct statement. There's the two types of nishtha is steadiness in the bhajan itself, pause, and then there's sakshat bhakti nishtha, steadiness in the activities of bhakti itself. That's the first, which isn't what she said. The second is steadiness in the attributes that assist one to reach bhakti and steadiness. Those are the two categories. Now, then what's the rest of the question?
I think rest was based on that assumption.
Okay, so the assumption, the premise of a question has to be right before you get the question. Next.
Second question. In Bhajana Kriya, one of the characteristics is that one is unable to give up bad habits like anger, greed, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And in the stage prior to Nishtha also, we see that habits like anger may be present. So is there any difference between these two stages, as they both deal with the same kind of vices?
There's similar, one is less mature, one is more mature. And one is getting closer to completion and one is further away from completion. Less mature, more mature. That's the distinction. I mean, one can go parse it a little more subtly, but that's the main distinction. Next.
From Amara Mataji, you mentioned that we should know what the anarthas are. And many times it is not clear due to weakness of heart or kutinati. So how to understand our anarthas?
Read and chant. And associate with those that do understand. And then repeat, and then repeat, and repeat. And gradually, you'll start to understand what you didn't understand yesterday. A little better today. And tomorrow, you'll understand better tomorrow. So it's just, as darkness is dispelled, then everything becomes illuminated. So go towards the light, and yes, it's important, but it's not imperative. I mentioned this like 6 times. If you don't know what all these lists are, don't worry about it. Amara, don't worry about it. It's nice to know. If when I get up from my chair, there's a speaker right on the front in front of me. So I can't just go banging into the speaker and the speaker's not there. It's there. So I walk around it. So, we know what the obstacles are. And, if you stub your toe, then you learn there was an obstacle over there. But so the sincerity of purpose, that Krishna should be pleased, that's in the foreground. The horse pulls the cart. What's the horse? Krishna should be pleased. What's in the cart is all that stuff. Just get your horse going. Krishna should be pleased. Focus on that Krishna should be pleased and refine that as much as you can. And what's in the cart back there, it'll start to empty out just of its own accord by natural arrangement. And it's good to know. But repeating, the premise of her question, it's good to know. Supposing you don't remember all these lists, don't worry about it. Next.
Second question also from Amara Mataji. As long as worldly obligations are there, is there any possibility of such exclusive service to Krishna as per Srila Rupa Goswami's definition?
Of course. Exclusive means you do those things for Krishna, not just for me. She's heard me say this so many times. I bristle when I hear, how do I balance my material and spiritual life? She knows. So here, for those of you that don't know, I call it the one-pocket program. The two-pocket program is so much for me, so much for Krishna, so much for me, so much for Krishna, me, Krishna, Krishna. That, the material. So make the material, just transition the material into, that's for Krishna. And do it for Krishna. Or don't do it. If it's not for Krishna. So how do I do it for Krishna? Then that's a good question. But it's not material. You spiritualize. Next.
From Kirit Parcells. Is Jnanavad same as Buddhivad? Srila Prabhupada said Buddhivad as Bhakti.
Do you understand the question?
Maybe if we replace Vad with Yoga, because Buddhi Yoga is equated to Bhakti, so maybe the question is Jnana Yoga same as Buddhi Yoga?
No. Read Bhagavad Gita. A good verse to read is 241 Bhagavad Gita. Because that is very clear what Bodhi is. Krishna says, I've described Sankhya, now I'm going to describe Bodhi. Here's what Bodhi is. And it's not Gyan. Next.
From Manini Radha Devidasi. Will the accumulation of the association with devotees affect one's free will to say yes to Krishna?
To rephrase her question, is she asking, this is someone from China, by the way, is she asking does the association we keep have an impact on how much or to what degree we're focused on trying to please Krishna? Is that what her question is? Is that what her question is? He's saying yes. You want to rephrase it?
I don't know. I mean, what is there is I read my interpretation, which might be wrong, is that is association with devotees forcing us towards Krishna, is it affecting our free will? But again, I don't know if that's what she meant.
That's not what she's asking.
Okay.
That's not what she's asking. Free will can't be created or checked. Just like bhakti can't be haitukiya pratyata. But the association that we keep, does it impact? Of course it impacts. Good association, bad association has an impact on how much. Supposing you had, supposing she gets, Manani Radha gets association of a superlative devotee. I mean, she's been in a situation where she's trying to help her mother. Her mother was like a wet towel, and it didn't help at all. Now she's in the association of devotees, and she's like air. And then, more association, more elevated association. So the association we have impacts how focused we are. Now, supposing you're at the stage of, a very elevated stage of bhakti, that it's, you just impact other people, not other people impact you. But in the progressive stage where she is, and most of us are, it's, the association we keep is important. We're respectful to everybody, and we have some very important people in our lives that we open our hearts to, tadati, pratigranati, etc. Especially, goyam akyati prichyati, punkte. So in a special way, there's special people. And it's natural. And does it affect? Yes, it affects. That's my understanding of her question in any case. That it? One more.
Last one. Before that, I want to say sorry for my misunderstanding of the question.
That's okay.
Second, also from Manini Radha Devidasi, how to understand that yoga and karma depend on bhakti to get their results?
Because what's the result? What's the aspired result? Supposing the karma yoga, the aspired result, it's like the difference between you know the verse. You're entitled to the performance of prescribed duty, but you're not entitled to the fruits of your work. Mahapaleshu kadachana. What's the difference between that and bhakti? Well, one is the fruit belongs to Krishna, and then I belong to Krishna. So the fruit, that's a subset of I belong to Krishna. But supposing I want detached work. I don't want the taint, the bad smell of touching matter. But I'm in the material realm. So I want detachment. I don't want a smelly hand. But that's not bhakti. So the real fruit of karma yoga is bhakti. It's dependent upon bhakti. And say the same type of thing for Gyan. What's the goal of the Gyani? We discussed this. The goal is either of two things: Paramatma Sayuja, or understand Sayuja Mukti, or connecting oneself with Paramatma and having mystic powers. Sorry, Charlie, that's not what the goal of. That's not the mature fruit of what knowledge is. Transcendental knowledge is a whole other thing. Transcendental knowledge is knowing Krishna. You can't know Krishna through Gyan Yoga. So the fruit of karma, the Jnana, is dependent upon bhakti, but not vice versa. Okay, the last question. You're very patient. And it's 4 o'clock. We're going past the 4 o'clock bell for you. Because you're so patient. And you have good questions too.
Maharaj, could you explain the connection? I think you mentioned this, but I did not clearly understand between the 9 levels and then Vedhi, Raganuga, and Ragatmika. Is there a parallel? So I think you said at the end that asakti is the highest stage of sadhana.
Speak slowly. So the last part, say the last part again.
At the end, towards the end, you said that asakti is the highest stage of sadhana bhakti.
Yes.
So does it include both Vedhi and Raganuga sadhana bhakti?
No.
Or just Vedhi?
Yeah.
Okay. And then Raganuga would be bhava?
Well, you're getting terms mixed up. Nomenclature. There's an approach. Let's go back a few steps. There's sadhana bhakti. And sadhana bhakti has 2 divisions. Vaidhi and Raganuga. Sadhana bhakti. They're both sadhana bhakti. One has this approach, the other has that approach. And they're both sadhana bhakti. There's a sadhana connected to that particular practice of bhakti. So that's one definition. Now you're going into the asakti and bhava and all that. Let's do this. Those who are practicing Vaidhi sadhana bhakti, let's do this. What was the attainment of Bhishma Dev? What was the attainment of Bhishma Dev?
He got to see Krishna at the time of death.
He saw Krishna, but where did the soul of Bhishma Dev go? It's very clearly expressed. Vaikuntha. And his Ishtadev, his deity, Mataji was asking about deity questions. His worshipable deity was Krishna, the chariot driver of Arjuna, Parthasarathi. And that's where he went, Vaikuntha. He didn't go to Goloka. Vaidhi sadhana bhakti. He had great respect. He prayed to the gopis for their mercy. It's right in his prayers. He wasn't unaware. He's vastly learned. But he wasn't performing raga, nuga, sadhana bhakti. Is it clear? So there's both stages, both practices, sadhanas, in 2 different destinations. Is that clear?
Yes, Maharaj.
Oh, good. Fantastic.
And Maharaj, asakti is still Vedhi sadhana bhakti. Asakti is the last stage of Vedhi.
Yes, it's the buds before the buds open into flowers.
Yes, Maharaj. And you mentioned that in Ruci, one has taste for bhajan, whereas in asakti, one has, like, the main object is the bhajaniya, which is Krishna.
The object of the bhajan.
So, is it the case?
These are not my terms, by the way, as we're repeating. I'll take credit for delivering their message, but it's not my message. Go ahead.
Maharaj, my understanding was that in Vedhi, the main focus is the process.
Yes.
So that's the bhajan that
Yes,
we are talking about.
that's correct.
So, Ruci, one has taste for bhajan.
Yeah.
Asakti goes beyond.
That's correct. It's more mature. They both have both.
Okay.
That statement's made. It's just one is a more mature stage of the former.
So in that sense, asakti is almost at the boundary of Vedhi.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then the bell rings. The caterpillar becomes a butterfly.
Yeah. Yes.
Bhava Bhakti. Just an earlier stage. There's a cocoon thing for a while. Then comes a butterfly.
Right. And Maharaj, in this is the last question. In the Satam Prasangan verse, it says, it describes the different progression. At the end, the verse says, that is when real devotion begins.
Yeah, what does that mean?
Yeah.
That's your question.
Yes.
It means by definition, unmixed.
Prema.
Well, unmixed. The definition of Rupa Goswami of what bhakti is, it's unmixed. No karma, no gyan. Super clean, squeaky clean. Then that's real bhakti. And the other is not like it's phony bhakti, it's just, it's mixed. Then real bhakti begins, means Shuddha bhakti. Shuddha bhakti. Kijai. Shuddha bhakti. Unmixed. Bhakti is unmixed. But it can appear to be mixed with intention of jnana and karma. So those two, jnana and karma, they're witches. They block bhakti. Real feelings of bhakti cannot arise in the heart of one who's haunted by such a witch. Jnana and karma. It's the same thing, saying it in different ways, in poetic ways, but it's the same thing. Then real bhakti begins. Now that's Prabhupada's language. It's not, a straight. There's a devotee who is a translator from Sanskrit to English. There's a few of them. And Prabhupada said, I didn't read it, but one of the translators said that Prabhupada said there are two ways to translate: literal and poetic. And I like the poetic because it gives the flavor. And you just do the literal, and it's not wrong, but it doesn't necessarily give the flavor. So, and then real bhakti begins. It's not the literal, it's the flavor. So a mature reader like you has to look to who's the translator and how are they translating. But that Prabhupada wanted the world to understand Lord Chaitanya's gift. And there's a literal, and then there's not exactly figurative, but poetic way of saying sweet, Madhurya.
Thank you.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Hare Krishna. So at this time we will be leaving for the Harinam Sankirtan.